Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to have a go at a simple misty autumn landscape. So grab your paints and let's get started. Okay, so we've got ourselves a blank piece of paper and a pencil. And what I'm going to do to begin is I'm actually just going to map out the sort of undulating hills and sort of sections that I want to sort of place in. There we go, so that's going to just really help with a sense of sort of where everything's going to go. And there's a sort of... So what we'll do is we're going to sort of give you a little snapshot of this photo so you can have a look at it and then have a go at your own version. Okay, so for me that's all I need. I'm actually not worrying about taping my paper down today because you don't always have to do it. Sometimes I really like having a nice sort of rough outline around the piece. That was my mop brush just flying across the screen. I was just getting some nice clean water on it. So the mop brush is brilliant for wetting your page nice and quickly and easily, and being able to do it in as sort of few brush strokes as possible. I do sell these mop brushes in my website shop alongside all of the other brushes you see me using, including the rigger brush, which is just fantastic. So that has wetted the page really nicely. The page is damp, but it's not sort of sopping wet. There aren't puddles and things on it. That's very important. So I've got a size 8 brush here, which is sort of my largest regular pointed round, and I've just got some really dilute blue mixing up cobalt blue deep and French ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to begin by some light sweeps of colour. And it was morning when I took this photo as well, so there was a lovely little glow of sort of yellowy orange on the horizon. Really was a fantastic sight that morning. Okay, so we do need things to just settle down a little bit. We need things to dry off. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working from the furthest away area and then coming forward. And so the furthest away area is going to have the most muted colours and the least detail, and then the way we build up the colour and build up the detail in the front gives us this sense of perspective. I've given that about a minute drying time. It's still damp, which is good, but what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take some dilute Paynes Grey, and I'm just going to begin to dab it along the horizon line there, and you can see that the page is still really nice and damp, and the colour is going on really nice and faintly. And I'm going to add a little bit of green now to my Paynes Grey, and I'm now going to add some of this to the next sort of hump, just sort of along the hump, not going down into the area beneath it, just allowing this colour to just settle. And you can see it's just starting to dry just a tiny bit more, which is good, but we're still getting a nice amount of movement. And now I'll get a slightly larger brush now, size 2, slightly stronger colour, don't worry about that. We're building up areas basically, which are also going to help us create this sense of the mist. So it's very important that you're painting in nice and translucent, and that we're going sort of swiftly enough that the paint is softening and bleeding. Lovely. Okay, and this section right in the foreground here is going to be a much more crisp precise area, so we don't actually need to worry about it for this point. So I'm just going to let this dry now a little bit more, and then we can go in and start popping in some detail. Now I will say the only sort of caveat with doing a painting like this is my paper has buckled a bit, but I don't really mind, because I'm just this is a nice little sort of sketchy painting, and if I could have taped it down and had a bit more control, but I really like I like just trying things out for you guys. So yeah, so don't fret if you're sort of going, why doesn't she tape the paper down? Well, sometimes I just like to try things a bit differently. Okay, so I've got a little bit of Paynes Grey mixed in with some Sap Green and some bits of a little bit of sort of burnt sienna and things like this. And I am just going to now be sort of creating a sort of bobbly top along this line, which is, you know, I've sort of used a bit of colour, a bit of crispness there. But what I'm going to do now is clean off my brush, and I'm just going to soften that down into nothing. And what we're going to get is this sort of sense of the mist kind of creeping in, and I'm going to have just a little bit bleeding off into nothing. And having done those sort of washes beforehand, that's really helping now with allowing for just this sense of built up colour, really. So now on this lump here, we've got just a slightly more defined set of trees. So I'm using my 2/10 brush to kind of create the sort of skyline of a set of trees, but for each one I'm going to blend down. I don't want to see too much. Because the whole point is that the mist is sort of creating a barrier for us. And I can try out some slightly different trees, some slightly different colours, but on the whole it's just a sort of case of using the small brush and then blending it down into very little. So I'm just going to keep carrying on along this line here. Every now and then maybe popping in as more of a fir tree, where we do a sort of central line and then just scribble out from the sides. But just remember to always be blending down and we'll get this misty landscape. So I'm just carrying on, continuing along each pencil line, just sort of building a tree up out of the top, using sort of various sort of autumnal colours that I've got in the palette, and then cleaning off my brush and just sort of blending it down into the page, and it's creating this lovely misty morning setting, and every now and then dropping in a little sort of pine tree. So after a central line, just sort of squiggling the brush is my technical term, but honestly it pretty much is that, down into the area beneath, but just always thinking about how to sort of soften it, down. Now I'm getting a little bit closer to the foreground, so you can see a tree like this has got far more detail than anything we've done so far, but it still gets softened down. So we're just carrying on and then we can get to our slightly more detailed bit. Now I've got my trees, I'm going to now place in a bit of the grass. I've got a sort of muted green using Sap Green, Green Gold, and a bit of Paynes Grey, and I'm just painting it in there, but also I'm just going to go slightly over the line and place in a bit of Paynes Grey and just almost sort of create a sort of shadowy underside for the trees there. We're on the home straight now, so we just need to fill in our last trees, and we can start to paint these in with a bit more sort of strong colour. But what I'm still doing is sort of blending them down, because watercolour is all about a slow build up of layers. You don't want to be putting in really, really strong colours too soon, because then you've got nowhere to go. So for now, just dabbing my size 2 brush, creating these sort of tree shapes, making sure I'm utilising the different colours in my palette, and also thinking about the different types of tree. So we'll pop in a few sort of pine tree, fir tree things. I will admit, for something like a pine tree, we probably are going to be going quite dark quite immediately. However, you see it still sort of dilutes down, doesn't it? But we are able to just get a bit in front of those layers behind. And now I'm going to start sort of bringing up Paynes Grey up into these shapes, and then bringing them down into it as well. So the real darkness comes right at the bottom in the sort of the shade of these trees. And then also we'll just sort of spread it out onto the field as well. So I'm just building up the layers as if I'd painted these just like the ones behind, but now we're adding sort of extra layers of detail. Okay, we are very nearly done. So just in finishing off that, I added in, sort of continued this line of trees along here, and added in just 2 little lines of burnt sienna to get a bit of a hedge. And now I'm just going to add 1 or 2 actually quite sort of refined, defined trees that are just sort of sitting along the hedgerow. So we want the area to be dry for this. So I'm painting in my the bases of my trunks first, using some Paynes Grey and burnt sienna. Just the tiniest bit, and now I've cleaned off my brush. And also then just going to sort of soften it down into the space. And now to use, I'm going to still be sort of making sure I'm using different greens and things, but just now painting in the last few trees in this sort of similar technique, but maybe just using this slightly smaller size 2/10 brush, meaning I can be a little bit more precise. And making sure I've got a bit of Paynes Grey in the bottom there to make sure there's a good sort of shadowy underside to the tree. And because it is autumn, making sure some of these trees have got a nice colour turn on the leaves. So just one final finish off is I'm going to take some dilute Paynes Grey and just give those trees the tiniest bit of shadow along the hedge there. And there we have a misty morning autumn landscape. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos like these that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And of course, if you never want to miss another video, then hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!